Hello again to all of you who are watching us and who are staying with us at DotVVM Virtual Conference. In this session, I will be showing some demos of DotVVM Business Pack, one of our commercial products. So if you try DotVVM, just the open source version, the things you will see are not there. But check it out because I think Business Pack can really help you in making more beautiful and more stylable user experiences in your DotVVM applications. So we have published DotVVM Business Pack 4.0 together with DotVVM Framework 4.0. We are trying to publish all the versions of our libraries at the same time, at the same day. So when you update to DotVVM 4.0, you have also the Business Pack and the Bootstrap for DotVVM component libraries ready to use and compatible and tested very well together. So what is Business Pack? Business Pack is basically a library with more advanced components. The .vvm framework contains quite a lot of components, but if you want to build a large enterprise application with hundreds of pages, complicated forms, then Business Pack contains more advanced controls. For example, tree view, there are a lot of pickers for dates or for some smarter combo boxes or drop-down lists and tab control, a lot of other things. There is also grid view, which has more features, and also the framework ships with a bundle of CSS styles, and you can customize these styles to make the controls look in the way you really want them to look. So it would fit your corporate design guidelines, or it would fit in the look and feel of the application. The problem is that front end is changing a lot. So if you have been using the Business Pack version 1, we wrote the front end in less, which is a preprocessor for CSS, which was very popular by the time when we started building .vvm Business Pack. But later it showed up that less is less popular than Sass. So we started using Sass, using the Node Sass package, which was the default and recommended way to do Sass. However, this package over a few years it got deprecated, and now we had to replace Node Sass to Dart Sass, which is still Sass, so it's not such a big difference, but a lot of things in Dart are done in a very different way. Basically, the importing other files is using another approach. So we rewrote to Dart Sass, so now we are in Dart Sass. And also there were a lot of requirements and a lot of new features in browsers. However, .vvm until the version 3.2 was also working in Internet Explorer. However, from .vvm 4.0 and Business Pack 4.0, we have finally dropped support for Internet Explorer, which on one side it's bad, because if you are still relying on this browser, you have to stay at 3.2 version, not 4.0. But on the other hand, this browser is not being used very frequently today, so if your users are using more newer browsers, or most of the current versions of the browsers, you can safely use .vvm and Business Pack 4.0. And thanks to that, we could use CSS variables to allow you to very easily change the visual appearance of .vvm Business Pack. So the first thing that can help you a lot is the CSS variables. If you didn't see how these variables look like, if you look at this piece of CSS, then you will see it starts with double dashes, and that's how you find the CSS variable. So you can declare the variable, and then you can use this variable to reference this value 3 pixels anywhere. So if you, for example, place this CSS in your page, then the buttons from Business Pack, this prefix, they will be allowed, they will get this variable set up. And if you look at the list of variables which we are supporting, you will see that this variable is actually used by button to configure the border radius. So that's why, that's how you can make rounded corners on the buttons. Of course, Internet Explorer doesn't support CSS variables. This was the reason why we haven't used the variables before. But now you can easily use it because we still don't support IE and we are only working on the newest browsers. We have a new page in documentation which describes the list of variables and how to style the controls, and it's very natural because if you open the developer tools in Chrome, you will see a complete list of variables, and you can in the Chrome developer tools you can just change the values and see what it will do. So it's very easy to figure out. So we are also preparing a special CSS class for dark mode, which will also be done by variables. So when you want a dark mode in your application, we will just apply some CSS class on the body element, and it will just override several variables. We are also thinking about introducing some kind of theme switcher control, which will allow also to store the value in the local storage or in cookies or in some other place. So basically, to allow the users to use the dark mode, you would just place one control in the page and Business Pack would recolor to the dark mode. So let's see how we can style our application using CSS variables. So basically, I have a very simple page here. I'm using a BP checkbox, which I'm using to just switch toggle the one Boolean property is BP override enabled. And this property is not doing anything special, only it applies a CSS class BP override to the body element. So when I check this checkbox, this CSS class BP override will be appended to the body element. Once I uncheck it, this class would disappear. And this is how we can turn on the override. Normally, you can just put a static CSS file which overrides the variables. I wanted to show that it's also interactive. You can switch this on, switch this off as you want. So, for example, if you want to make some kind of larger layout for users who cannot see very well, that's how you can do this dynamically, because you don't need to load any new CSS files. You are just changing CSS variables and it will apply and propagate through the styles that are loaded. I have a lot of buttons because the button color, they are the different colors, and you can override all the colors of the buttons so you can see all the versions we have. I have also placed here several form controls so you can see text box, numeric up down, combo box, date picker. Well, actually, I'm a bit lying here because I didn't prepare the demo. My colleague, who is responsible for CSS variables, was preparing the demo. So sorry, not I have put these controls here. My colleague Lukáš has put these controls here. So sorry for mystification. However, if I look in this style CSS, you can see I have some trivial styles that are used all the time because I need my page to look like something. So these are global styles. And this, if the body has the BP override CSS class, then I'm overriding some CSS variables. So for example, you can see the primary color, I'm using this turquoise color, and also I have some colors for hover and for accent. The same I'm doing with secondary, success, danger, warning, and all those class. I'm also changing the padding. I'm also changing the horizontal padding, so there will be more space between the controls, and I'm also setting border color and border radius to 0.5 em, so we will see. And also there are some control specific styles, so only for buttons I want to make the round corners really rounded, so I have placed this insanely high value. However, it will be trimmed to the half of the size of the button, so no matter how big is the button, this will be full rounded corner. It will look like a pill. You will see it in a few seconds. So let's run the app. And you can see this is the default Business Pack style. So you have default colors for various colors for buttons, and also the form controls have some styles. So default things, default behavior, as you know. When I check this checkbox, the CSS class will be appended to the body, and the new values of the CSS variables will be applied. So now you can see we have changed the color. So primary color is this turquoise color, and also secondary is very different, and also the controls get rounded corners and they get different border color. And also you see what the insanely huge border radius does to the buttons. So these edges, these shorter sides are full circle basically, or half of the circle. So this is maximum possible border radius for the buttons, so they look like pills. So this is how it works. Also, when you open this combo box, you can see even the items have rounded corners, and you can tweak also the colors which define whether the item is selected or not. Same with the calendar. It's smaller, but you can still see all corners are rounded. Yeah. Business Pack comes actually with two visual themes. The default theme is called Enterprise, and if you don't specify it here, it will be applied automatically. So this is the default look and feel of Business Pack. However, I can change it to Bootstrap 4 because we were asked to provide a version of Business Pack which will be compatible with Bootstrap for styling. So you can see that now the buttons look differently, and you can see they are using the same colors as Bootstrap 4. And also these buttons, these text boxes are larger, so if you use it together with native Bootstrap things, it will look the same, it will fit the user interface of Bootstrap. So if you are interested, you can use Bootstrap style in the .vvm Business Pack. Yeah, you can see also the calendar is bigger and it looks more Bootstrap-ish. Yeah, so that you can use. And also the override works also here. So if I turn on the override, you can see something is changed, but some properties where you remain from Bootstrap because, for example, the sizes of things are a little bit bigger. So you can use these variables to customize how the controls look, and to demonstrate how the controls are powerful, let's open the DevTools and let's just see one of these resources. And this resource, their Business Pack gives you basically two resources. First is default CSS, which is the full CSS block of code for Business Pack controls. And there is Bootstrap for CSS. And if you look in this file, you will see, and I will do this, you will see that the entire Bootstrap look and feel is done only by overriding variables of .vvm Business Pack. So the variables are really powerful. We basically use the same CSS, only via overwriting the variables we are achieving the same look and feel as is in the Bootstrap 4. So you can see we have had to basically override almost all variables we have there, but you can see the Bootstrap 4 look and feel is just this override of the variables, nothing else. And if you look into any element and you want to see complete list of the variables the Business Pack is using, you can select any element in the page and look at the root definition, and you will see all the variables we have here. There is 71 more variables, so there is about like 100 variables, and most of them are global, some of them are control specific. So for example, checkbox size, you can customize checkbox size. So if I want to make the checkboxes bigger, let's do this. I hope that it will work because I haven't tested, so sorry it doesn't work. Maybe it's overridden in the checkbox somewhere, but let's do it here, maybe BP checkbox. Yeah, you can see this is overridden. This is overridden here, so maybe if I will change it on some other element, then it will be working. So let's do it here. No. Here I will have to, yeah, here this is overridden here, so I can just override it here, for example, 40 pixels, and you will see now it's bigger. So the only problem is you have to override the CSS variable on the right level, not on the root. The BP checkbox is overriding this for checkbox and radio button. So that's the issue. Okay, so that's how you can use CSS variables to style Business Pack components. And we are preparing more documentation and also some theme builder where you can do it not in the DevTools but in the browser. So you will see a list of variables and you can change the values in the browser, and it will immediately apply to the Business Pack controls. Okay. Another package we have just published is .vvm Business Pack messaging, and in the previous session you have seen how to use SignalR in .vvm applications. The advantage of that, it works without Business Pack because it's just a bunch of JavaScript that you will place aside of your application. However, if you have Business Pack, then you can use a new component which is called, it's included in the package .vvm Business Pack messaging. And this control, or actually there are two controls, it allows you to use SignalR without writing JavaScript. Basically, you need two things in the page. First is some connection. So you say this page will connect to some SignalR hub, and it will listen for events. And once some event is changed, is pushed in the hub, and it will be delivered in your browser, then you can specify some message handler. So for example, these controls say that, okay, please connect to this URL of SignalR and listen for all the events that are present there. You also have an option to filter these events, so the page will get only the relevant notifications. Also, it's good for following the user permission, so user can see only their own notifications, not all of them in the system. So that's what you should configure carefully. And then you can use one or more message handler components that will say, okay, if we see a method name called chat message, then we will add something. For example, I will add a message that I received from the connection. I will add this message to the list. So it's very easy, and thanks to the support of lambdas in static commands, this is very interesting because the chat message gets one argument of type message. So it's here, and I can just change my view model using this new value. So I'm just adding this value to a collection. So basically, what you need to do is to create a SignalR hub on the server. It's just a C# class that inherits from the hub class, and you need to configure it in your startup.cs and specify the URL. And then whenever you want to send a message in the hub, you need iMessage context instance. Yeah, so you can get it in the constructor, for example. Be careful here. There is also iHub context, which is a SignalR based interface, but .vvm provides some abstraction over it. So in order to make static commands work correctly, use iMessage context, not iHub context. And if you use iMessage context, if you declare it in your constructor, you will get an instance, and then you can say message context clients all invoke method chat message and pass a parameter there. You can pass only one parameter or no parameters. If you want to pass more, make a class or record or something that will continue several properties, and that's how you can pass multiple arguments. You can pass objects, basically. So let's see how this works. So I will switch to another project called chat, and as you can see, first start with the SignalR hub, and it shouldn't be very complicated because I'm just declaring my own hub and inheriting from hub. If you want to restrict the user not to see all the notifications but only some notifications, you can override the onConnecting or connected async method and read the user identity from the cookie, for example, so determine the user ID, and based on that you can subscribe the user to some groups, and then you can send the notifications only to specific groups. So if you want to distribute different messages to each user, then the easiest way is to create a group that will be called just the user ID and then send the messages to the group, so you will be sure that no other user can read someone else's messages. So that would be brilliant. In this case, I want everyone to see everyone because it's a one global chat room, so that's why this hub class is empty. I need to register it in the startup, so I have to basically say endpoints map hub and assign some URL, so hubs/chat. And now in my page I can just use this. I will create a messaging connection. say that I want to connect to this URL. Also, you can bind to some Boolean variable. So based on the status of the channel, you can indicate whether you are connected or not. So I'm using this Business Pack alerts to say, okay, I'm connected or I'm not connected. So the user will see if the internet connection is stable, if it works. And then I just have a repeater with a list of messages. It's just a normal list of some objects in my view model. The chat message, it has three properties: author, message, and the date of creation. That's it. And basically, I'm just rendering these messages. I'm just using other CSS class if the message is from myself. So it will have another color, so I could easily recognize it. And then there is a very trivial, just text box and button. So whenever I click the button, I will send this chat message to my chat service, and I will also make the text box empty so I can write some other message. This chat service is a static command service, because one of my colleagues, he was mocking me that I'm always using classic commands, not static commands. So this time I'm using static command. I can do that. And you can see I have just requested the iMessaging context in the constructor. And here I can say send to all clients chat message. That's the name of the method where I can, which is specified here in the message handler. So that's why you recognize which command you want to call. And then I'm passing the object, just the chat message object. You need to be careful that here you will get the chat message object. So if you try to get some other object, or if you make a mistake, then you will get some JavaScript errors. So make sure that you will specify this type here correctly. And then I can just add the message to the list of messages. So let's run this. I will try to run it without debugger. Okay, it seems it's working, and I will open two windows actually, so you will see that two people can talk to each other. So first will be John, enter chat, and the second will be Paul, for example. Okay, I'm not good in CSS, so that's why this is not aligned to the bottom of the page, but no worries. So hi everyone. And you can see this is green because it's my message. This is someone else's message, so it's blue. So I can respond, and you can see that the messages are synchronized immediately because I'm using SignalR. So it's very fast. It's real-time messaging here, so it's very easy. And also you notice that these messages are stacked to the bottom. That's some kind of CSS magic using Flex layout, but it's very easy because the messages are appended at the end of the collection. So that's just some CSS trick, nothing special. So once again, there is the messaging connection, which is basically, typically it's once per page. Sometimes you may want to be connected to multiple hubs, so you will need one connection per each hub. I recommend to use this wisely because you don't want to have thousands of SignalR connections, so please don't put this in the repeater or something like that. Place it in the master page or in the normal page, and then you can have the message handler. And here is the filter. So if you are sending several types of the notifications, this is the way how to distinguish. This is basically the ID. Be careful, it's case sensitive. Yeah. So this chat message must be here, and here is just the command that will be called when you get the message, and the argument will be passed here. So it's very easy to work with this. Also, there is another fine thing in .vvm 4.0. We have added this to browser local time method because the created date, it's in UTC. If multiple users from different time zones would be connected to the same chat, of course it makes sense to convert the times of the sending of the message to their own time zone, to the browser time zone. So you can use this extension method, and basically if this date is in UTC, then this method will convert it to the browser's local time zone, so everybody can see different time based on the time zone they have set in on their machine. Yeah. But it doesn't make sense if this is not in UTC. So make sure if you are using this, make sure the values are really actually in UTC. Okay, so that's the chat. And I have a third thing that I want to show. If you are using grid view and .vvm Business Pack, you have probably used exporting to Excel or CSV or some other formats, because Business Pack was supporting this functionality for quite a long time. However, the library we were using for generating Excel files is no longer maintained, and also we have experienced a lot of problems with that. So we had to change the underneath library to a library called Closed XML. It's very popular. It's very nice. It's the API is quite user-friendly, so I was able to do a lot of things using this library without even looking in the documentation. So it's very natural, easy to use. And we have also added configuration API, so you can fine-tune how the Excel exports look like, because previously the grid view basically spit out some Excel file, and if you needed to fine-tune it, you basically had to load the produced file, change it, and save it into another stream before passing it to the user. So for example, basically you will create a new object, grid view Excel export settings, and you have some Fluent API methods. You can rename the worksheet that will be exported. You can tell do not start the table in the top left corner, start the table like make there 2 empty lines or something, or 2 empty columns, because you want to place some your own content, for example the logo there. Also you can easily say, okay, adjust the cell size so all the text will fit inside. That's very very useful. Also you can turn on the table header, so when the Excel is open, the users can immediately filter or sort and do things like that. You can also customize rules for each column. So for example, you can say that the column that is bound to begin date property, I will be using some rules for example, I can ignore this column because I don't want to show it in to the user, or I can transform the value before passing it to the Excel, for example, to trim out the time from the date to have there just the date information and things like that. There's a lot of options, and also there is extensibility points. So for example, you can say after the library finished the export, you can still touch the file and you can still make some changes before the stream is produced. So you have a lot of extensibility points here. So let's look at the demo. I have to switch the projects again. So here I am, and I have a very simple page. There is grid view with several columns, and basically it's my very simple time tracking system. So I want to show the date when somebody went to the work, and from which time, at which time he came, which time he left the work. But you can see I am using the same property for the 2 columns, because first I'm just showing the date, and next I'm just showing the time. But I'm using the same property because it has the information date and time together in one property. And time is probably the same, the date is the same, but the time is different, so I'm only displaying the time. Here I'm calculating hours, but I want to append age behind the number, so that's why I'm using template column. So I can do this, employee name description, and I also have some buttons that can do something here. This is just the demo, so the button doesn't actually do anything, but in the table typically I have some columns I don't want in my exported file. And here is the simple export button. And you can see that I'm doing quite some configuration before I will give the Excel file to the user. So let's start. First, I need to find the control in the page, because the export needs to read the columns in the grid view. So basically, I need to add some ID to the grid. So that's what I've done. And I need to find the control by ID and cast it to grid view. Then I need my Business Pack dataset, which will contain the data for the export. I could use the dataset I have here in the page, but there is paging. There are only 15 rows. So if I use this dataset, then it means that I would only export the 15 lines which are currently visible. I want to make complete export. I want to export all the pages. So that's why I'm creating a new business pack data set. I'm copying the sorting options from the current dataset, from the display dataset to my own, because I want to preserve the order of the rows the user had. And then I'm loading the items from my data service using iQueryable, so it's very simple. And because I haven't specified the paging, I will have all the data in my dataset. Do not send such a dataset to the client. Do not put this in the view model because it can be very large. But for the sake of Excel export, you can get this in memory and then it will be collected away by the garbage collector. Now I'm creating this grid view export Excel settings. It needs to know the type of the records in the dataset. And now I can do some configuration. So I can say my worksheet will be named time tracking. So when you look at the tabs at the bottom of the Excel file, there will be one tab and it will be called time tracking. I want to make it start on the row number 3 because I want to put the title above the table. So this is with start address. I want to make sure that the columns are wide enough to fit all the content inside. And also now I'm configuring some columns. So for example, I've named some column with this column name property to date. These names must be unique, but you can use these names to uniquely identify the column in the grid. So for column which is named date, I will just get the date out of the date time. Yeah? So this is the date time and I want to only pass the date part in the Excel file, not the entire information, because Excel would show both. Then for the begin time, I want to just pass time of the day, and for end date, and you can see I don't need to use this string ID. I can also use this expression. However, these two columns were bound to the same property, so it wouldn't work very well. So that's why I had to use these column IDs. So now I can also use this expression, which is strongly typed. It's great. And I also strip the date and keep only the time. For hours, I want to round the value to 1 decimal place, so that's how I can do it with a column value provider. This column value provider must be here because I'm using the template column, so the Excel wouldn't know how to render this because it doesn't like evaluate HTML which is in the template. It needs to know the value, so that's why I've provided with column value provider. And also I'm saying the column with edit button I will ignore, so it will not be present in my Excel export. When the export is finished, I can hook up here and in the first cell, I can add the time tracking report and set some font size. So that's how I have placed the title of the report. And then I can turn on table headers. And also I will make this totals row in the table. So I have allowed the totals row in the table, and I've said that the third column with the number of hours will use the sum function for the total. And then it's easy. I am just passing these settings here and I'm exporting the file and returning it to the user. So when I run this, you will see the business pack grid view, which is here. You can see there are multiple pages. And when I click export, you will see that the report is customizable and it should look pretty nice. So you can see there is the title with the font size of 20. You can see here are only dates, here are only times, and number of hours. You can see the table can be filtered right away because these headers are enabled. And also you can see there are all the rows, not only the 15 rows which I had. And here in this column, here is the sum of all the hours in the table. So it's very easy for you to use for anyone who wants to make further analysis or further predictions based on these files. So that's how we've made the Excel exports configurable. So I hope that you will find this useful. The bad thing is that we had to change the underlying library that generates the Excel files to closed XML, but our experience with closed XML is very nice. It's a very good library, so I recommend you to use it even if you are not using .vvm Business Pack. What are the plans for the next versions of Business Pack? First, we want to make our form controls behaving better on mobile devices. So when you will be using a date time picker in the next version, it will position the pop-up nicely on the mobile device, maybe on the full screen or something like that. We want to make sure that these controls can be used conveniently for the users from the mobile devices and on tablets and on touch screen. So that's where we want to invest some effort. Also, we have several reports of that some of our controls, for example, the tree view, are quite slow. So we want to make some performance improvements so the tree view would be very fast. We are thinking about rewriting it in the new way using either the React integration or the composite control approach, because right now it's written in the old-fashioned way. And also we have implemented a control called hierarchy repeater, which was previously in the business pack, but now we put it in the framework because it can be useful for more people. Also, I've already mentioned the control for dark mode switching, and also we want to look at PDF exports because also the library we were using is not performing very well today, so stay tuned. In the next versions we will use some other solution or some other library to make beautiful PDF exports. Probably we will be using some HTML to PDF conversion library, because HTML and CSS, they have great way of customizing how the tables are rendered, including like repeating the table headers on all the pages of the report. So that's why we want to go this way, so stay tuned. And of course, if you have any questions about Business Pack, or if you have any thoughts or suggestions for improvements, let us know in the chat or contact us directly on our Gitter chat. We will post the link in the chat under this live stream. So thank you.